Why did the room go quiet the moment his fingers tangled in her hair? Maya Chen felt the pull before she understood the intent. A sharp yank, pain blooming at the base of her skull, laughter behind it, the kind that assumed permission, the kind that believed the world would step aside, beer breath near her ear, a voice too close, too confident. Get out. The words weren't loud, they didn't need to be. The mistake wasn't the command, it was the touch. What happened next took less than 3 seconds, enough time for gravity to do its job, enough time for a 200-pound Marine to realize he had made a catastrophic miscalculation. His back hit the floor hard enough to rattle bottles. Chairs scraped. Someone swore. Someone else stopped breathing. Maya stood there calmly, her ponytail still clenched in his fist, because she hadn't pulled away. She had gone forward. 19 years old, hoodie, jeans, looking like she belonged anywhere except here, except her eyes told a different story now. Cold, focused, uninterested in approval. She didn't smile. She let go. Silence swallowed the recreation center. 40 men stared at the girl who had just dropped their enforcer without raising her voice. Maya felt the familiar tension settle into her chest, the one she carried everywhere. The weight of being underestimated, of knowing exactly what people saw when they looked at her, and what they never saw coming. She picked up her phone like nothing had happened, like this wasn't the moment everything changed. But it had already started long before tonight. Because 8 months earlier, on a rooftop half a world away, Maya Chen had taken a shot that saved 2 lives and ended another. Because sometimes life and death share the same breath. Because sometimes doing everything right still breaks something inside you. She was 18 then, barely old enough to vote, already carrying a rifle that felt like an extension of her heartbeat. The bullet traveled over a kilometer through heat distortion and shattered concrete. She watched it pass within inches of a hostage's head. Target down. The words came out steady. Her hands didn't shake, her soul did. Later she learned the nurse's name. Rachel Morrison, 24, volunteer, engaged, wrong place, wrong moment. The kind of loss no after-action report could cleanly explain. Her mentor had spoken gently that day. Derek Morrison, Hawk, a man who understood that some wounds never healed, only learned how to be carried. 3 weeks later, Hawk was dead. Bad intelligence. An extraction that was supposed to be clean, it never was. Maya didn't cry at the funeral. Grief didn't come out as tears anymore. It turned inward, hardened, focused. She made a promise at his casket, quiet, absolute. She would find what failed him. And she did. Which is why she was here tonight, sitting in a marine recreation center, letting men reveal themselves, letting arrogance speak freely, letting hands reach where they never should. Because sometimes accountability doesn't announce itself with a badge. Sometimes it wears a hoodie. What kind of soldier walks into enemy territory unarmed and waits? Maya didn't come to Camp Lejeune to make a point. She came to collect evidence. Every laugh, every insult, every step too close. Power always revealed itself eventually. You just had to let it think it was safe. Staff Sergeant Connor Briggs thought he owned the room. He thought fear was leadership, thought size equaled authority. He didn't recognize the stillness in her posture, didn't hear the warning in her tone. That was his second mistake. The first was underestimating someone who had nothing left to prove. When he grabbed her wrist, Maya moved with the efficiency of someone who had done this before, not in bars but in rooms where mistakes meant death. She flowed out of the booth, redirected his weight, and pinned him without effort. Her forearm pressed against his throat, just enough pressure to remind him how fragile certainty was. Hear what's going to happen. Her voice was calm, educational. You're going to stop touching people. You're going to stop confusing intimidation with leadership. And you're going to start asking questions before you assume. Who the hell are you? He gasped. She smiled then, not kindly, not cruelly, patiently. The kind of smile that comes from waiting. I'm Sergeant First Class Maya Chen, Naval Special Warfare. The name landed hard, phones came out, eyes widened, reality arrived late to the party. She didn't raise her voice when she showed them her orders. Didn't need to. Authority didn't shout. It documented. By the time she walked out into the night air, 40 Marines were staring at the wreckage of their assumptions. Careers suddenly felt fragile. Pride felt expensive. Maya didn't feel victorious. She felt tired. She dialed a number she knew by heart, gave her report, looked up at the stars afterward. "I'm here," she whispered. "I didn't forget." She never did. What does it take to humble a unit trained never to bend? Morning came early. The range was quiet, watching eyes everywhere. Maya took her position without ceremony. Rifle settled, breath slowed, world narrowed. She didn't miss. 30 rounds. Perfect. Then she pushed further, farther than most dared in combat. Steel rang at distances others only discussed in theory. She wasn't showing off. She was setting context. When the Marine sniper stepped up afterward, he did well, better than most. But watching someone exceed your ceiling changed how success felt. Excellence, Maya knew, wasn't about humiliation. It was about exposure. And then came the real test. She disappeared into their training facility and turned 40 hunters into students. She didn't rush, she watched. Patterns emerged quickly. Predictability always did. One by one, Marines found themselves zip-tied with notes pinned to their chests, not insults but lessons. Your breathing gives you away. Your confidence blinded you. You trusted routine over awareness. By the time they realized what was happening, half the platoon was gone. And then one Marine did something different. He stopped trying to win. He started trying to understand. Maya noticed immediately. Because that was the moment everything shifted. When did learning become more dangerous than losing? Marcus Webb didn't fight her, he followed, watched, waited, learned. When she confronted him, there was no anger in her eyes, only recognition. "Why didn't you attack?" she asked. "Because I can't beat you," he said, "but I can learn." That answer mattered. She gave him a choice, surrender or growth. He chose growth. Back at command, Briggs listened as Webb reported, not tactics but insight. Something clicked. For the first time, Briggs saw his unit clearly, not as warriors, as habits. And habits could change. When Maya returned, she didn't finish them. She evaluated them. And she saw something worth saving. Can a broken unit earn a second chance? Retraining was brutal, not physically but mentally. Maya dismantled egos with quiet precision, taught awareness over aggression, partnership over dominance. She put men on the ground without hurting them, again and again, until frustration gave way to humility. SEALs arrived next. Integration failed at first. Old rivalries surfaced. Maya stopped the exercise cold. "War doesn't care who wins," she said, "only who survives." Slowly, something real formed. On the final exercise, Marines and SEALs moved as one, covered blind spots, shared silence, trusted without competing. They caught her, not because they were stronger, because they were smarter together. What remains after pride burns away. At the memorial wall, Maya stood beside Hawk's name again. She told his story aloud for the first time in months, not the missions, the man. Briggs listened, really listened. "I didn't know," he said quietly. "You didn't look," she replied. "Neither did I for a long time." They stood there, two soldiers learning that guilt didn't vanish when acknowledged, but it could transform. When the final recommendation came, Maya didn't end the unit. She rebuilt it. 3 months later, Bravo platoon passed with distinction. Before she left, Maya looked back once. Not with regret. With resolve. Because sometimes strength isn't loud. Sometimes justice doesn't shout. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak at all. It simply acts. Why did every instinct in her body tell her not to leave when the door finally closed behind her? Maya Chen stepped into the cool night air outside the recreation center, the sounds of laughter and bravado dying behind her like a fire starved of oxygen. Pine and salt hung in the breeze. Somewhere beyond the barracks, the ocean breathed steadily, indifferent to rank, reputation, or regret. She didn't slow her pace, not because she was afraid someone would follow, but because stopping would mean feeling everything she just buried under control. Her hands were steady, they always were. It was her chest that betrayed her, tight and shallow, like the moment right before a shot broke. That suspended breath between intention and consequence. She hated that feeling. It reminded her too much of rooftops and scopes and the way the world narrowed to a single point where choice became irreversible. Inside the recreation center, she knew chaos had replaced confidence. She could picture it without looking. The way men who had built their identities on certainty now scrambled to understand how wrong they'd been. The way humiliation burned hotter than anger. The way denial would try to creep back in if she didn't move fast enough. That was the danger, not their fists, not their words. Complacency. Maya reached her quarters and locked the door behind her. Only then did she lean her forehead briefly against the cool metal. 1 second, 2, 3. Focus, she whispered to herself. She dropped her backpack onto the chair and pulled out her phone. The screen glowed softly in the dark room. Messages already waited. Word traveled fast on bases like this. Faster when it involved embarrassment. Faster still when the embarrassment had a name and a face that didn't fit expectations. She ignored most of them. Instead, she opened a secure folder. Faces, names, dates, patterns. She replayed the footage she'd captured in the recreation center, not the fight but what came before it. The body language, the hierarchy, who laughed first, who stayed silent, who looked uncomfortable but didn't intervene. Leadership wasn't about who spoke the loudest. It was about who set the tone. And tonight, the tone had been rotten long before she walked through the door. Her phone vibrated once, then again, a secure line. She answered without hesitation. Initial contact, the voice asked. Confirmed, Maya said, worse than projected. A pause, any surprises? Yes, she replied after a beat, and maybe potential. She ended the call before the conversation could drift into reassurance. She didn't need comfort, she needed clarity. Hawk had taught her that. Comfort dulled edges, clarity sharpened them. She lay back on the narrow bed and stared at the ceiling. Sleep didn't come easily anymore. It hadn't since Yemen, since the nurse, since the way victory and loss had blurred into something indistinguishable. Her mind drifted back to that rooftop, uninvited. The wind had been unpredictable that day, the kind that punished arrogance. Maya remembered adjusting her scope millimeter by millimeter, feeling time stretch thin. She remembered the hostage's shoulder trembling, the terrorist's finger tightening. And afterward she remembered Hawk's voice, calm, steady. You did your job, he'd said. But someone still died. Yes, he'd replied, and that's the part we carry. Maya turned on her side now, pulling her knees slightly toward her chest. She wondered, not for the first time, how much a person could carry before something inside finally gave way. A knock at the door cut through the quiet. She was on her feet instantly, heart rate rising, not from fear but readiness. She checked the time. Too early for morning briefings. Too late for casual conversation. She opened the door just enough to see the silhouette of a Marine standing rigid in the hallway. Young, nervous. Ma'am, he said quickly, eyes fixed somewhere above her shoulder. Staff Sergeant Briggs requests permission to speak with you. Maya studied him for a moment. The tension in his jaw, the way his hands curled and uncurled like he didn't quite know what to do with them. Does he now? She said quietly. The Marine swallowed. Yes, ma'am. She considered saying no, considered letting the uncertainty stretch a little longer. Pressure revealed truth just as effectively as force. But something in the young Marine's posture, something unsure yet earnest, made her pause. 5 minutes, she said, outside. Briggs stood under a floodlight near the walkway, his hands clasped behind his back like he was bracing for impact. He looked different without an audience, smaller somehow, not physically, but internally. The swagger was gone, replaced by something raw and unsettled. He snapped to attention when he saw her. "Commander." "At ease," Maya said. "You asked to speak." "Yes, ma'am." He hesitated. That alone told her more than hours of observation. "I didn't know." She raised an eyebrow slightly. "You didn't know what?" "Who you were," he said. "What you were there for." "That's rarely the problem," Maya replied. "People know exactly what they're doing. They just don't know who they're doing it to." Briggs winced. "That's fair." Silence stretched between them, not uncomfortable, honest. "I reviewed my unit's files tonight," he said finally. "Again, after everything." And Maya asked. "And I saw patterns I should have seen months ago," he admitted. Aggression excused as toughness, complaints dismissed as weakness. Intelligence pushed through without verification because no one wanted to be the guy who slowed things down. Maya studied his face. She'd seen men like him before, men who mistook momentum for competence, men who believed hesitation was failure. "What do you want from me, Staff Sergeant?" she asked. Briggs exhaled slowly. "I want to know if this is already over, if you've already decided." Maya considered the question, thought of Hawk, thought of Rachel Morrison, thought of the promise she'd made beside a flag-draped casket. "I don't come to places like this to confirm decisions," she said. "I come to test assumptions." "And ours failed," he said quietly. "Yes," she replied, "spectacularly." He nodded once, accepted it. That mattered. "I won't insult you by apologizing for the wrong reasons," Briggs said. "But I will say this. I built a unit that values confidence over curiosity. And tonight, that nearly cost us everything." Maya felt something shift, not forgiveness, not trust. Recognition. "You built a unit that reflects what you believed strength looked like," she said. "The question is whether you're capable of believing something else." Briggs met her eyes. There was fear there, real fear, not of punishment but of exposure. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I want to find out." Maya nodded slowly. "Then be ready tomorrow." "For what?" he asked. "For discomfort," she said. "For humility, for realizing how much you don't know." He almost smiled, almost. "Yes, ma'am." She turned to leave, then paused. "One more thing." "Ma'am." "You don't own this base," she said evenly. "And you don't own the people under your command. Leadership isn't possession, it's responsibility." Briggs swallowed, understood. She walked away without another word. Back in her quarters, Maya sat on the edge of the bed, heart heavier now, but steadier. She replayed the conversation in her head, dissecting every pause, every inflection. She wasn't naive. One moment of humility didn't erase years of rot, but rot could be cut away if someone was willing to endure the pain. She lay back again and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow would be brutal, not because she intended it to be, but because truth always was. She closed her eyes, Hawk's voice drifting up from memory like a ghost she welcomed instead of feared. "Sometimes," he'd said once, "the most dangerous thing you can do to someone isn't hurt them. It's make them see themselves clearly." Maya exhaled slowly. Tomorrow they would see. And so would she. Why did she choose to disappear just when they were starting to look for her? Dawn arrived without ceremony. A thin gray light crept over the training grounds, flattening shadows and revealing every flaw the night had hidden. By the time the first Marines assembled near the range, Maya Chen was already gone. Not absent, intentional. She had checked in hours earlier, logged her presence, and then erased herself from expectation. No briefing, no introduction, no explanation. Confusion was the first lesson. It always was. From a ridge overlooking the base, Maya lay prone, her body pressed into cold earth, rifle settled comfortably against her shoulder. She wasn't aiming at targets. She was watching people, how they moved when they thought they were unobserved, how uncertainty changed posture, how leaders behaved when their authority wasn't acknowledged immediately. Below her, Staff Sergeant Briggs stood with his platoon, jaw tight, eyes scanning the perimeter more often than necessary. He hated not knowing where she was. Maya could see it in the way his shoulders rose slightly with every passing minute. Good, she thought, let it sit. She adjusted her optic, not to zoom in but to pull back. Context mattered more than detail right now. The Marines were capable. That wasn't the issue. Capability without awareness was just noise. She waited. 30 minutes passed. Then 40. Whispers started. Someone laughed nervously. Someone else checked their watch. Discipline began to fray at the edges, not dramatically but subtly. That was always the first crack. Maya keyed her radio once. Begin. The word echoed across the training ground, amplified through speakers they hadn't noticed before. Heads snapped up. Conversations died mid-sentence. Exercise parameters are simple, her voice continued, calm and unhurried. You are being observed. You are already compromised. Your objective is to identify how. Briggs looked up toward the ridge instinctively. Maya smiled faintly. He was learning. She moved then, not quickly, efficiently, sliding backward, rolling, disappearing into tree cover with the kind of quiet that came from years of knowing where not to step. Her route took her downwind, circling wide, using terrain like an old friend. Within 10 minutes, she was inside the perimeter. The first Marine never heard her. He was too focused on the tree line in front of him, convinced threat only came from where you expected it. Maya stepped behind him, applied pressure in just the right place, and guided him gently to the ground. She zip-tied his wrists, pinned a small card to his vest. You were watching the wrong direction. She moved on. The second Marine spotted movement, but assumed it was another unit. Familiarity was a liar like that. By the time recognition kicked in, Maya was already past him, her hand tapping his shoulder once in passing. A courtesy. When he turned, she was gone. Card number 2 appeared minutes later. You trusted what felt normal. The exercise escalated quickly after that. Radios crackled, orders overlapped. Briggs tried to reassert control, but information lagged behind reality. That gap, the space between what you thought was happening and what actually was where Maya lived. She watched frustration bloom, watched confidence give way to irritation, and then, inevitably, to ego. A fire team broke off to hunt her aggressively, loud, fast, certain. Maya let them chase a ghost. She doubled back instead, slipping into a blind spot created by their own formation. One by one, she tagged them. No force, no theatrics, just inevitability. By the time Briggs realized half his platoon was compromised, Maya stood in the center of the training ground, completely visible, hands relaxed at her sides. She hadn't been hiding. She'd been waiting. Exercise complete, she said into the open channel. Silence followed, heavy, embarrassed. Marines emerged slowly from cover, discovering zip ties, notes, the quiet evidence of failure. No one spoke. No one laughed now. Briggs approached her, stopping a respectful distance away. His face was flushed, not from exertion but from realization. You were inside our perimeter the whole time, he said. Yes, Maya replied. And we never adjusted. No, she agreed. You reacted, you didn't adapt. He nodded slowly. What did we miss? Maya met his eyes, each other. She turned to the group then, her gaze sweeping across them. There was no anger in her expression, no superiority, just clarity. "You're trained to dominate space," she said, "to move fast, to overwhelm, but you don't listen, not to your environment, not to your instincts, and not to the people standing next to you." A Marine near the back clenched his jaw. "With respect, ma'am, this isn't combat." Maya walked toward him until they stood face to face. She wasn't tall, but she didn't need to be. Presence wasn't measured in inches. "No," she said quietly, "it's worse. In combat you expect chaos. Here you assumed safety." The Marine swallowed, looked away. Maya stepped back. "Take 10 minutes, hydrate, reset, then we do it again." A murmur rippled through the group. Someone muttered something under their breath. Maya heard it. She always did. "This time," she added, "I won't be alone." Confusion returned, sharper now. She disappeared again. This round she partnered with the terrain and with their habits. She predicted movements before they happened, anticipated reactions, watched Briggs try to compensate, shifting patrols, tightening formations. He was adapting, slowly, but adaptation under pressure revealed character. One Marine did something different. He stopped. Marcus Webb lowered his weapon slightly and scanned, not for threats, but for absence. He noticed the quiet where there should have been sound, the gap in coverage no one had assigned because everyone assumed someone else had. He adjusted without announcing it, shifted position, closed the gap. Maya observed from cover, interest peaked. She tested him. A deliberate sound to his left, a distraction. Webb didn't bite. His eyes flicked once, then returned to the empty space ahead of him. Smart, she thought. She circled wide, changed elevation, approached from an angle that had caught everyone else. Webb turned just enough to acknowledge her presence, without raising his weapon. "I know you're there," he said calmly. Maya stepped into view. "Why didn't you engage?" she asked. "Because that's what you wanted," he replied, "and because I can't win that fight." Honesty rare, valuable. "So what are you doing instead?" she asked. "Watching," he said, "learning, waiting for you to make a mistake." Maya felt something unexpected then. Respect. She nodded once and stepped back, vanishing again. When the exercise ended, Webb was the only one without a zip tie. Briggs noticed immediately. Later, as the platoon debriefed, quiet, subdued, Maya stood off to the side, arms crossed loosely, listening more than speaking. She didn't correct every error. Let some observations come from them. Ownership mattered. When Webb spoke, others listened. That was new. As the group dispersed, Maya approached him. "Why didn't you chase me?" she asked. Webb shrugged slightly. Everyone else was doing that, it wasn't working. And you weren't the real problem," he said after a moment. "Our gaps were." Maya studied him. "You don't sound surprised." "I've been feeling it for a while," he admitted. "Just didn't know how to say it without sounding weak." She considered that. How many people stayed silent because strength had been defined too narrowly? "You didn't sound weak today," she said. Webb met her gaze. "I wasn't trying to be strong, I was trying to be useful." That answer stayed with her long after he walked away. As evening fell, Maya returned to the ridge where the day had begun. The base looked different now, smaller, less imposing. Systems always did once you understood them. She thought of Hawk again, of the way he'd pushed her not to prove herself, but to understand herself. She exhaled slowly, the weight in her chest shifting, not lighter but more balanced. They weren't fixed, not yet. But they were listening. And sometimes that was the hardest battle of all. What happens when the person who always controls the field finally loses control of herself? The call came just after midnight, sharp and sudden, tearing Maya Chen out of a shallow half-sleep she hadn't realized she'd slipped into. The room was dark except for the dim glow of her watch. She didn't need to check the number. Secure lines never announced themselves politely. Training stand down, the voice said. Real-world tasking, immediate. Maya sat up, spine straight, heart already adjusting its rhythm. Real world meant consequences. It meant no reset button. It meant everything she'd been building here was about to be tested somewhere that didn't care about lessons. Details, she said. Unknown hostile movement near a coastal logistics hub. Local assets compromised. Joint response required. Joint, the word carried weight. It meant Marines and SEALs together. It meant egos under pressure. It meant old habits resurfacing when adrenaline hit. Maya closed her eyes briefly. This was earlier than she'd planned, but war didn't wait for tidy arcs. I'll brief them, she said. The operations room smelled like stale coffee and tension. Maps glowed on screens. Red markers blinked where they shouldn't have existed. Briggs stood near the table, jaw set. Webb was there too, quiet, alert, absorbing everything. Maya didn't waste words. This is not a test, she said. This is not about proving anything. We go in clean, we get eyes on, we get out. If you feel the urge to rush, stop. That instinct will get someone killed. No one argued. That alone told her something had changed. They moved under cloud cover, rotors muted, bodies packed tight. Maya sat across from Briggs in the aircraft, watching his knee bounce once before he forced it still. He caught her looking and gave a small nod, not defiance, acknowledgement. On approach, something felt wrong. Not tactically, intuitively. Maya scanned the shoreline through night optics. Too quiet, too orderly. Logistics hubs were messy by nature. Noise, movement, human error. This place looked curated. Hold, she said into the mic. The pilot hesitated. We're green, ma'am. I know, Maya replied. Hold anyway. A beat, then compliance. That pause saved lives. The first explosion tore through empty space where they would have been seconds later. Fire bloomed harmlessly against rock and surf. Shockwaves rolled across the water. Adrenaline spiked, voices overlapped. Contact possible secondary. Eyes on thermal, multiple heat signatures. Maya forced herself to breathe. Disperse, she ordered, slow, controlled. They moved like they'd practiced, not perfectly but together. Marines covered angles SEALs would have ignored. SEALs slowed Marines who would have pushed. It wasn't seamless, but it was functional. Then Maya heard it. A sound that didn't belong. A sharp crack too close. Pain exploded through her shoulder, white and immediate. She hit the ground hard, breath driven from her lungs. For a moment the world narrowed to sensation, heat, pressure, disbelief. Shot. She hadn't seen it coming. The irony stung worse than the wound. Maya's down, someone shouted. Hands were on her instantly, too many, panic trying to dress itself as urgency. Back off, she rasped. I'm up. She was. Her left arm refused to cooperate. Blood soaked through her sleeve, warm and relentless. She fought the urge to retreat inward, to disappear into the pain the way she sometimes did when memories surfaced. Not now. Webb, she said, forcing her voice steady, take point. He froze for half a second. Leadership transfer was never comfortable. Then he nodded, on me. Briggs moved beside her, eyes wide. You're hit. I noticed, she said dryly. You still have a mission. He hesitated. She saw the war behind his eyes, the instinct to protect clashing with the need to act. Go, she said, not loud, absolute. He went. Maya lay there, pressed into cold earth, the sounds of controlled movement and distant gunfire surrounding her. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't in control. Fear crept in quietly. Not of dying. Of failing. Her vision blurred as the medic worked, fingers efficient, voice calm. Stay with me. I'm here, Maya whispered, but part of her was. She was back on that rooftop again. Wind, scope. The nurse's face flashing through her mind like a warning she hadn't heeded. Hawk's voice steady, reassuring. You can't carry it all. She'd never believed him. The gunfire faded. Orders came back clean. Extraction confirmed. They carried her to the bird, careful but fast. As the aircraft lifted, Maya stared at the ceiling, jaw clenched, fighting the burn behind her eyes. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Later in the medical bay, reality settled in layers. The wound wasn't life-threatening. Clean through. Weeks of rehab, months before she'd be operational again. Temporary removal from field duty. The words hit harder than the bullet. Briggs stood at the foot of her bed, helmet under his arm, Webb beside him. We completed the objective, Briggs said quietly. No casualties. Maya nodded once. Good. It was because you paused, Webb added, back at insertion. Maya closed her eyes briefly. It was because you adapted. Silence settled. Briggs shifted. You trusted us. Maya opened her eyes. I didn't have a choice. Yes, you did, he said. You always do. That thought unsettled her more than anything else. After they left, Maya stared at her bandaged shoulder. Vulnerability felt foreign, uncomfortable, necessary. She'd spent years building control like armor. Tonight it had cracked. And something else had slipped through. Hope. Not loud, not triumphant. Quiet, fragile. Real. She turned her head toward the window, watching dawn begin to creep in once more. Another day, another chance. She didn't know what came next. But for the first time in a long while, she didn't feel alone carrying it. What do you do when the battlefield goes quiet, and the noise inside finally gets loud? Maya Chen woke to the soft, mechanical rhythm of monitors and the distant murmur of voices she couldn't quite place. Hospital light filtered through half-closed blinds, turning the room a pale gray that felt neither night nor morning. Her shoulder throbbed in time with her pulse, a deep ache that reminded her she was still here. Still alive. That realization used to bring relief. Now it brought questions. She tested her fingers one by one. They moved. Slowly, reluctantly, but they moved. Control in small increments. She exhaled and let her head sink back into the pillow. Don't sit up yet, a nurse said gently from somewhere to her left. You're not late for anything. Maya almost laughed, almost. Late had never been an option in her life. Late meant sloppy. Sloppy meant dead. Even now, part of her mind was running checklists, position, exits, contingencies, before she forced herself to stop. I need to see the report, Maya said. The nurse smiled, not unkindly. You need to heal. Maya turned her head slightly, eyes sharp despite the pain. I can do both. That answer had defined her for years. The nurse studied her for a moment, then nodded. You're stubborn. I'm trained, Maya replied. When the room was quiet again, she stared at the ceiling and waited for the familiar sense of urgency to return. It didn't. Instead, something heavier settled in her chest, a stillness she wasn't sure how to navigate. Without motion, without command, memories slipped through the cracks. Hawk's laugh, low and unexpected. The way he'd brewed terrible coffee and insisted it built character. The look on his face the day he'd told her she was ready, really ready, even when she didn't believe him. You don't have to prove it every time, he'd said. She ignored that too. The door opened softly. Maya turned her head to see Briggs step inside, posture careful, as if entering unfamiliar territory. He held himself differently now, less rigid, less performative. How are you feeling? He asked. Like I lost a fight with gravity, she said. He nodded, fair. He didn't rush to fill the silence. That alone told her something had shifted. They're asking questions, Briggs said eventually. Command about the unit, about the integration. Maya waited. They want to make it permanent, he continued. Joint rotations, shared training. She considered that, the ripple effects, the resistance it would face, the lives it could change. "Do they want my opinion?" she asked. "Yes," Briggs said, "they respect it." The word respect landed differently than it would have weeks ago. "Then tell them this," Maya said. "If you formalize it, don't water it down. Discomfort is part of the design. The moment it gets easy, it stops working." Briggs nodded. "I'll pass it along." He hesitated at the door. "I also wanted to say, I didn't realize how much I was hiding behind certainty." Maya looked at him, really looked. "Most people do," she said. "Certainty feels safer than curiosity." "And yet," he said quietly, "curiosity saved us." She didn't argue. After he left, Maya closed her eyes and let the quiet take her again. This time, it carried her somewhere unexpected. Back home. Her mother's kitchen. The smell of ginger and oil. Her father sitting at the table, hands wrapped around a mug, watching her like he always had, proud, worried, unable to reconcile the girl he raised with the world she'd chosen. "You don't have to carry everything alone," her mother had said once. Maya had smiled then, said nothing. Now, lying in a hospital bed with her arm immobilized and her future temporarily uncertain, the words felt heavier, more honest. Days passed in measured increments. Physical therapy, debriefings, paperwork that felt stranger than any mission. She watched the unit from a distance as training continued without her direct oversight. And they didn't fall apart. They struggled, they argued, they adjusted. Webb visited once, standing awkwardly at the foot of her bed like he wasn't sure if he belonged there. "They're different," he said, "not perfect but better." Maya nodded. "You're part of that." He shook his head. "You started it." "No," she corrected gently. "You chose to continue it." That distinction mattered. On her final day before release, Maya walked slowly through the base, sling tight against her side, sunlight warming her face. Marines nodded as she passed, not out of fear, not out of obligation, out of recognition. She stopped near the range, listening to the controlled crack of rifles, the cadence of commands layered with something new: conversation, correction without ridicule, awareness without bravado. She smiled faintly. Later, standing alone by the water, Maya let the ocean wind brush against her skin. The same wind she'd once measured for shots now felt less like an adversary and more like a reminder. Everything moves. She thought about the promise she'd made to Hawk, about vengeance masquerading as purpose, about how easy it was to confuse fixing systems with avoiding grief. Her phone buzzed softly, a message from command. Offer extended, instructor rotation, long-term. She didn't respond right away. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to sit with the question instead of outrunning it. Who was she if she wasn't always on the edge? The answer didn't come immediately, but something close to peace did. She typed her reply slowly. Accepted with conditions. She looked up at the horizon as she sent it. The world didn't need her to be invincible. It needed her to be present. And that, she realized, might be the hardest mission of all. What remains when the mission ends, but the choices stay? Maya Chen stood alone before the memorial wall, the stone cool beneath her fingertips, the names etched so deeply they felt permanent in more ways than one. Dawn painted the sky in quiet colors, the kind that never asked for permission. She read Hawk's name without moving her lips. She didn't need to. It lived in her. For the first time since his death, she wasn't here to bargain with the past. She was here to listen. Footsteps approached slowly, deliberately. Maya didn't turn. She knew the rhythm now. Briggs stopped beside her, hands clasped in front of him. He didn't speak right away. Neither did she. Some silences earned their place. "They're deploying next week," he said eventually. "Joint element, different theater." Maya nodded. "They're ready." They'll make mistakes, Briggs added. So will you, she replied gently. He smiled at that, a real one. You won't be there. No, she said, but I'll still be part of it. They stood together, watching the sun rise higher, burnishing the wall with light. Briggs cleared his throat. I used to think leadership meant never letting people see doubt, he said. Now I think it means letting them see how you move through it. Maya turned to him then. That's because doubt doesn't disappear when you hide it, she said. It just finds worse places to live. He nodded once, thank you. She didn't deflect it this time. Later that morning, Maya walked into the training hall not as an operator but as an instructor. The room felt different from the field, quieter, expectant in another way. Faces turned toward her, Marines, SEALs, some familiar, some new. She didn't open with credentials. She opened with a question. Why do you think most people fail under pressure? Answers came cautiously at first. Fear, fatigue, bad information. All true, Maya said, but incomplete. She paused, letting the room settle. Most people fail because they confuse identity with performance. When the two collapse into each other, every mistake feels personal, and that's when learning stops. A few heads nodded, others frowned, good, thinking hurts sometimes. Over the weeks that followed, Maya found a rhythm she hadn't known she was missing. Teaching demanded patience instead of precision, curiosity instead of control. She learned to watch growth unfold without forcing it, learned to intervene less and trust more. Some nights were still hard. The quiet didn't always behave. Memories surfaced uninvited, the nurse's face, the rooftop, the shot, the weight of consequence. But now she didn't face them alone. She talked to someone, not a superior, not a subordinate, a human being trained to listen without judgment. It felt awkward at first, weak even. Then it felt honest. One evening, Webb stopped by after class, lingering as others filed out. I got promoted, he said, not prideful, just surprised. Maya smiled. You earned it. I wanted to ask you something, he said. How do you know when to step back? She considered the question carefully. You don't, she said. Not at first. You just notice when stepping forward is about protecting your ego instead of your people. Webb absorbed that, and then you choose differently, she finished. Months passed, the unit deployed. Reports came back mixed, honest, human, successes and failures intertwined, lives saved, lessons learned, no illusions. One afternoon, Maya received a message from Briggs, a single line. We lost one today, but it could have been worse, it was. Maya closed her eyes and held the phone to her chest for a moment. Grief still arrived. It always would, but it didn't hollow her out the way it used to. That night, she returned to the memorial wall alone. She stood there longer this time. I kept the promise, she said softly, just not the way I thought. The wind moved through the trees behind her, gentle and insistent. She didn't wait for an answer. She didn't need one. As she walked away, Maya felt something settle into place, not resolution but acceptance. The understanding that strength wasn't a permanent state, it was a practice, renewed daily, tested quietly. Sometimes dignity didn't announce itself. It didn't demand attention or applause. Sometimes dignity didn't speak at all. It simply acted,